to kind of continue this conversation of what's been happening this weekend with ceremony and our guests, and to support and to listen and to learn. And I'm excited to observe the conversation and to share space virtually. So, but I'm pretty sure I will be just in the background and very excited. Is there anything you wanted to touch on, Julia?
I'll just say a little bit about the folks who are here and just what this is about. So this conversation is being hosted by many different groups. We're all working together on this, and it's a culmination of a lot of different things. So Solidarity Economy St. Louis is a local network that has been around for about 5 years. I'm the founder of Solidarity Economy, and we really just try and create a community of people based on share the same values and are trying to build a different economy and find ways for us to meet our basic needs from each other versus from an exploitative capitalist system. So Native Women's Care Circle, which Fondi is a part of, is a member of Solidarity Economy, as are many, many, many dozens of other groups and hundreds of individuals throughout the St. Louis area. And part of our work together has been developing a collaboration called Rebirth, which is really focused on Black and Indigenous solidarity and tradition and healing. So I'm here today just to support, to host the space and to kind of help with technology things or any sort of, just to make sure that everybody can engage in the way they would like to. So yeah, thanks for being here. And Fondi, why don't you do a little intro of yourself, and then we'll introduce the other guests that we have, Ife Afriye and Jessica.
So welcome everyone. OCO, I'm going to ask if you would take what I'm offering here in the spirit that it's meant. I'm lighting sage and asking you to breathe in. And the way that I was taught is that we take this smudge as a cleansing. And we smudge our eyes so that we can see the truth. We smudge our ears so that we can hear the truth. We breathe in this smudge, this sage, so that our hearts know the truth. And we breathe it in so that our mouths may speak the truth. And one of the things that is so important is water. Water is healing, and it needs to be healed. So we are here with the title Water, 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 because water is everything. But we are also supporting the Sacred Water Pilgrimage. And that is journey. This is, St. Louis is the third stop, and it involves on the full moons, and this full moon is for the sturgeon. If I'm mistaken, please help me. We're also talking about chakras and the throat chakra. And the throat chakra involves communication and truth. So with that, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath, and we're going to speak truth. And it's not always comfortable to speak truth. So I'm going to ask Creator to help us in our uncomfortableness and our comfortableness. And I'm also going to start with a little bit of this. You all know I'm a first grade teacher. I have to tell you that Grandma Josephine was told that one day water will be more valuable than gold. And she was asked, what will you do for the water? And she said, I will give my life for the water. And she has. She has walked the great lakes. She has walked the rivers. And now she has crossed the river and gone on. But we still have her legacy. So with that in mind, remember that Nibiange, Nibiange, Imarasiwin. We have that for the good life. So with that, I'm going to ask us to introduce, with my guests, introduce themselves. We're going to start off with beautiful, beautiful Faye, and then go to Jessica.
Maha, or Mache, excuse me, I'm still on Eastern time. Mache, that's good morning in Tree, which is the tradition, the spiritual lineage that I am descended from. And there are three of us with the Wind and the Warrior to introduce. So I'd like to ask, I'm listed, but there are actually four of us all together and three here on the call. Would like to hand it over to Nana Fofier to say hello and introduce herself, and then move to Karma.
Mache, everyone. I'm Nana Fofier, Amina Bashir, 1/4 of the Wind and Warrior, here in St. Louis for our third stop of the Sacred Water Pilgrimage. And it is beautiful to be here with you this morning. Madasi, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we also have Karma.
Good morning. Good morning. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you once again. And looking forward to this discussion and learning more about the ways in which we can continue to grow in our honoring of the waters.
So, Jessica, do you want to say hi or thank
Jessica?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Ashley Dandridge. I am born and raised in New Orleans, but my family is from a town called Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. So long roots there in Louisiana. I am, I don't know if we call ourselves a fellow Ife or what we call ourselves, but I guess you would say I'm a fellow of the pilgrimage. I'm learning from the Dana as a women warrior. But I also run a nonprofit, executive director of the Water Collaborative of Greater New Orleans, which focuses on urban water management, which we can get into what that means if people aren't familiar, and climate adaptation, because New Orleans is our most precious asset is water, but it is also our biggest threat. And just to put into context, by 2050, if we don't make major changes, not just in New Orleans, but globally, New Orleans is at risk of being underwater, as well as all of Southeast Louisiana, from a variety of reasons and factors. And so what I do is bring multiple sectors together, whether it's engineers to nonprofits to artists, together to one, bring awareness, but also work on education policy and equity issues to move this forward in a very short period of time. We are running under a very tight schedule, 20 years. So thank you.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to start with was exactly what Jessica was talking about. In the locations that we are, St. Louis is important. St. Louis has the longest and the biggest rivers at its confluence. And what we do here goes downriver to where Jessica is. So we are an important part of keeping that clean. And it's not just what the river's doing, it's what is happening with us human beings politically and emotionally and physically. And it's all tied together. So I wanted to start off by asking if our sisters from the Wind and the Warrior and Jessica, if we can talk about, I think the first thing is, how is water going to be affected by what we're doing? Because it seems like this was a spiritual start, not just the need to do the political part, but a spiritual part too. So how did we get started with this walk? Just like Grandma Josephine was asked, what will you do for the water? I'm gonna ask that as the question for all of you. What and why are you doing for the water? And I do have to apologize. My dog is barking at the mailman.
I guess if it feels right, I'll hop in and then. So what am I doing for the water? So I can provide a little bit of like factual information. So I don't know how many people on this call have been to Louisiana. It's a beautiful cultural place, but as I mentioned, our biggest asset has always been water. The fishing industry has far surpassed oil and gas as far as economics for our city, and also just our culture and our food, right? We have seafood in our gumbo. It's a part of the way we live. It's the bayous, it's Cajun culture, it's Creole culture. We're highly connected to the water spiritually, culturally, traditions. So you mentioned, Mama Sande, the pollution in the Mississippi River. So basically, and we talked a lot about that in Iowa, but basically from big agriculture, as well as oil and gas, fossil fuel industries, all kinds of industries, they dump into the Mississippi River, and that creates a dead zone. Once it gets to the foot of or we as the boot, it creates a dead zone, which is basically the lack of oxygen, which can kill sea life and sea creatures, not sea life, but Mississippi River creatures, as well as Gulf of Mexico creatures. And that dead zone gets bigger every year. And again, bringing back to the industries, many of our communities, Black and Native, actually Betty and Dawn, who are not on this call right now, but they are on this pilgrimage with us. They're here with us in St. Louis. Their families are fishermen or fisher folk. And so we have to consider that the indigenous communities, Black communities, as well as all communities in Louisiana are threatened by big agriculture. So that's just the rivers. And then on top of that, with climate change, because of the heating of the earth from global warming, the seas are going to rise due to the snow caps melting, which we've all heard about in some form or capacity. But Louisiana is going to be the first state impacted by that sea level rise. So we were already losing about a football field a day because of, again, oil and gas industry. You see there's a trend here. Oil and gas industry destroyed the Delta in the Mississippi area, from Texas all the way to Alabama. But Louisiana is going to get a brunt of that because we're a Delta, so we've always been below sea level. And so the waters are rising every single day. We're losing our natural beaches, we're losing our natural wildlife, we're losing all of that. And then add insult to injury, in cities like New Orleans and other areas, because of the heating of the earth, we have heavy rainstorms. I was just talking about this just a minute ago. And so New Orleans is experiencing rain bursts, which means we're getting 5 to 20 inches of rain in between 3 to 5 hours. And that's common. So if you Google New Orleans flooding, this has been happening now since 2016. And I just got off a call last week with the climatologists with the state as well as the federal government, and they expect this to be common and happen pretty much monthly, especially in the summertime. So we have water coming from the seas, coming up and then coming on top of us. And both are caused by climate change, which is caused by a degradation of our natural landscape and the way we care about our earth. It comes from using fossil fuels and depending on big agriculture and other industries, which then cause our state of Louisiana to basically disappear. And we have basically by 2050, they said if we don't get our act together in many different ways, New Orleans will be a Venice or an island. And that will cause other issues like mass migration. It'll cause issues of illnesses, more mosquito-borne illnesses, more things like COVID could potentially happen because we're closer to water, the water's not clean. And the people who are going to carry the brunt of that weight is going to be people of color. Women, particularly, you can look online, the statistics, women carry that weight more, but also Black women, Indigenous women, and in Louisiana, particularly Vietnamese women who are also part of the fisher folk community are carrying the brunt of that weight. So we have a lot of different aspects to look at. And so what are we doing and what are we focusing on? That's what we're I'm focusing on quite a lot, but that gives you a little bit of an overview and context. I don't want to take up more time. I don't know if Ife wants to happen.
Thank you so much. Ife?
Okay, a couple of us are right in that same area. Jessica laid out the realities, the conditions that the Gulf folks who live in the Gulf are facing, and really speaks to what Gulf community or what coastal communities are increasingly experiencing. So, but as far as this journey is concerned, spiritually, there several folks held a vision or were given a vision and a charge, and then took up a charge to do something. And then what's the something? Part of it is this the work around addressing the impacts of climate change on communities and ecosystems that's born out of the crises that Jessica described. Also, we know that part of the work is it's rebuilding, strengthening, evolving our relationships with the land, with waters, and with the people who reside along the waters. And so as this charge came, this vision was kind of planted in different people. There are a few of us who happen to have been in conversation about a year ago, sharing our visions. And Colette Pichon Battle, who's the executive director of the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy, put voice to it and said, hey, this is coming up for me. And this happened we had a gathering, Women Warrior gathering last year. And then we created space to talk about and strategize then what might this journey mean, or what might it look like to realize, to manifest a vision like this, moving from the headwaters of the Mississippi to the openings, moving from a crown to the divine sacred openings in the Gulf. And then we began our intentional work around planning for that. But a lot of that work intentionally was first like within ourselves, continuing to ask ourselves those questions. Questions of what is our charge? What's our call? What does it look like concretely, practically? What would it take to do something like this? And we're asking these questions at a time where folks were stretched thin, and it's almost like, well, how do you make things happen when there's so much happening in the world and there's so much pulling on our time in different ways? But as we received the charge and we took on we began to embody that intention, things began to move, and we were able to concretely, we began to have conversations more broadly than a couple of us, beginning back, I think, in March, in April, and then the planning really began and continued. And so we're learning a lot along the way. We're trying to keep ourselves open for from the messages of the Mississippi, the Mississippi herself, and all of those that reside in and around her. So being in continuous conversation and sacred conversation and ceremony and prayer, and trying to do our best to listen, to seek to be in right relationship with every stop that we make along the way. And then what's come to us, as Sister Sandhi described at the very beginning, this is our third stop, the stop that is, we're associating with the throat chakra. And the first stop was the headwaters, was at the crown. And the second stop was with the sixth chakra, and then with sight and vision. And now we're here at the throat, and we'll continue down until we get to that sacred root chakra, which is in the Gulf, in December 21st. and with each of those, it's all of the meaning and the symbolism that comes with each of those energy centers. And so we're seeking to remain open. We want to be at each stop in a sacred relationship with Native Indigenous folks, with land and waters in the areas of each stop. There are 7. And be, you know, humble and hold integrity at each step of the way. So I'm going to pause and just see. I know I took up a little space, but see if my sisters have something to add to that.
And I'm going to say that one of the things that we say is that we shouldn't apologize for taking time for truth. It's important for people to have a common history and background so that we can all heal together. And one of the purposes of this call is a continuation of the beautiful ceremony that was done after a virtual ceremony that was done after a physical ceremony on the Mississippi. So these truths are important and they do connect. Are you hearing, folks, that the people down below are getting what we send them? But until we can work together, and that involves healing, we can't pull together in the same direction. So I am very grateful for your truth. Thank you. And we have more truth to get as a foundation. And then we do want to hear from some of the people that are on this call, because the truth is we need to connect, heal and connect. So if Nana Fofe can do that for us, add more to our truth, dear, please.
Excuse me. Jessica and my sister Ife already added so much. And I love coming from those two different directions. You know, what are the material realities and what are the extractive industries and injustices that are happening, as well as what are the messages? What is the calling of the land? So when you ask what we're doing for the water, as my sister said, when this vision came to us, when this mandate came to us, it felt like this was last year. We knew that 2020 was going to have a lot of energy because of the election. We had no idea, obviously, all of these other things that were going to be happening between the uprisings and COVID. And so that, of course, had us call to pay special attention in terms of how we are interacting, but also in terms of what is the world saying? What is the earth saying with this uprising and so many people being called to be still and to pay more attention to how we physically interact. Excuse me. I think really about one of the messages here is that in the balance of, while we're working about the material realities and climate change, and our elder Renee, who hosted us at the very first site, brings this into conversations all the time. And it's something that we have also said, which is shifting that water as a right, shifting our work on water from what we have a right to versus our solidarity with water having her own right. And so this pilgrimage is also very much about, as Ife said, building the relationships. Also, it's about healing. It's where we are going down the Mississippi River because we recognize the intense ancestral trauma and harm that has happened in that and along that river with Black and Native communities. And so the purpose being to join together an Indigenous ceremony from both of our traditions to heal that. And then to heal our relationships with one another. As doing that, recognizing is also we're working in to heal relationships with the water and for the water to heal. And this is normally I have a complicated relationship with this word, but I'll use it here as kind of a solidarity and resilience. You know, because there's the work that we have to do on climate change, but then there's also what is the underlying spiritual work that we have to do to connect? What is the vibrational work that the earth needs from us and with us to withstand what is happening while we're making these changes? So it's tapping into all of those things through ceremony, through prayer, for understanding really what is the need. As with any organizing, when you enter into community and you enter into work, you first have to ask, what is the need? Part of this is also just connecting with the water and finding out what is the need.
I want to also add a little bit on the context to bring it full circle. I think I started this journey. Actually, I feel like I was called to this. Colette announced it. I'm a part of her coalition, which is the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy's Green New Deal. And I'm a part of that. And she mentioned this pilgrimage down the Mississippi River for Black and Indigenous women, Two-Spirit women. And I was like, I have to do this work. And as I have learned from Women Warrior over the past couple months, I was like, why is this calling me? It's calling me for a variety of reasons, but to bring it in context to the industries, extractive industries, and now is that the way we're tackling climate emergencies or climate change is through a colonized and still extractive lens, right? I'm in a space, being very honest, with majority white men, majority white women. In my space, I can probably count on two hands how many Black people I work with. And when we think about the answers to these issues or the solutions, it's always coming from an engineering mindset or a mindset of what they're doing in the Netherlands or what they're doing in New Zealand or all of these white, basically, cities and countries. And I have a huge problem with that because New Orleans or Louisiana is not like that. It is a very diverse cultural traditional state that has so many intricacies that cannot be whitewashed or extracted from, or shouldn't use extractive strategies to fight these issues. And so I think for a long term, how do we connect those things, right? How do we do that? I think we have to decolonize the way we think about the solutions. And so what I'm learning through this is not just the answers, but also how do we look at ourselves as a spirit, and how do we look at inside, right? How do we heal and reconcile? Because also in my industry, you would think people in climate change are all getting along, but they actually all hate each other. And so I'm called to actually support the healing of my sector in order to heal the earth, right? Because when I started a year ago in this particular position, everybody was fighting. And I'm realizing now, a year after being in this position, that I'm also called to do other things, include help figure out how we can move together as a community rather than separately. And you focus on this engineering technique or this colonized technique, and we're not getting anywhere. So I wanted to just, in my personal view, and I think every fellow has their own reason for being here, which is also why it makes it special. There are other people in this group who are called for this for different reasons. And I think that's why this is so important. And I think I highlighted that on the call a little bit yesterday, that we had a virtual ceremony where I said, like, every stop has been highlighted by a moment in time, and it wasn't intentional. I think we talked about that with Women Warrior, we talked about that with Colette. Colette's like, we didn't plan this, it just happened this way. And so I think it really speaks to the power of this process, the power of the pilgrimage, and the need for what we're doing. So just wanted to add that to that.
I know you want to open it up, Sister Sonia. I want to mention Kellen LaCour is also one of the fellows. So just calling your name into the space as well.
I know there are lots of different groups and lots of different people here that have connections with water. There are people politically, spiritually, physically that have connection with water on this call. And I do want to invite them in. So here's what my thought is. I'd like to go around and give people a chance to add voice in here, either to something we've said or something they're thinking about. And I want to do that with this question. I know each and every one of us could talk all day about the water, but we have the physical world's constraint of time. So what we're going to do is take about 20 seconds to add in to this question. The question is, what important things do we need to know from you about your relationship with water? what important things do we need to know from you about your relationship with water? And I'll put that into the chat. I'm also going to, at about 15 seconds, give a sound like that. But remember, I'm a teacher. So that'll be your cue to maybe wrap up and put the important things you want to share with this group into what you're saying. 20 seconds is not a long time. So we're going to put into the chat what are the important things you want, and my spelling is always bad on these, want to share about the water. Okay. I think I got that in there. What are the important things you want to share about? Alrighty, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask if we could start with Miss Karma, and I'll work around and do names as best that I can. If you want to share, do. If you can see the whole screen, we'll go down and around, and if you jump in, just do it, okay? We'll try to be polite to each other, and if we need direction, I'll try and give it. How's that? Is that good? Thumbs up, everybody. Show me yes. All right. So we'll. Karma?
Sorry, I got it. Okay. Yes. Peace and love again. I just was typing into the chat. Something, excuse me, very important about my relationship with water is that I listen to the water. Water herself is a sacred being, a sentient being, a communicative being who infuses all life forms and who speaks to me and to anyone, I believe, who would listen about our personal journeys, giving us information that we need in each of our human healing journeys, about our relationships to our family, blood and chosen, about the cycles of life as it flows and functions on planet Earth, about our relatives, the winged ones who fly, the ones who swim, the four legs, and about the destiny that we have as two-legged people and our responsibilities. One of the ways that we prepared as the Wind and the Warrior to begin the pilgrimage is that for a number of months we had a series of meditation practices that we shared, that we did simultaneously. The four of us live in different locations, but at the same time in the morning we committed excuse me, to rising before the sun and to sit. Water gazing is one of our most treasured practices, and it's a practice that's shared across many traditions. One of the things that we do along the pilgrimage at each stop is offer suggestions for prayer and ways to engage with ceremony that will facilitate greater and greater opening of that internal communication, so that each one of us, and so that we as a community and as a whole, can continue to be guided and be instructed. We were given real specific instructions. For example, there are 7 stops along the pilgrimage. We were told very, very clearly that 7 should be the number, because we had been discussing the magic number 7 for many years together. And we were told that when we begin this pilgrimage that we should make sure that we stick with that 7, with that sacred 7. We were also told so many things that I won't list, but one of them, for example, is that as we go along, we should look for opportunities to feed children in the different places along the pilgrimage. The water spirits, as we know them in many traditions, have a special love for children, human children. And we know that the water, as the source of our life, is the creator of all abundance. And so when we're in the practice of seeking to walk in a good way, it's really important that we take actions to support the generations to come. And we know that Native tradition speaks of 7 generations. And so we see the reflections and the connections between traditions, specifically with that number 7, as in many of our ways and traditions, but that's just one example of the ways that listening to the water can provide some guidance.
That was perfect and important to hear. Karma, thank you. I'm going to move on to, as I'm looking at the screen, because it's jumped on me, I'm going to jump next to me so that it's easier for us to go down. And Libby is there. And I think Libby is calling from Denver. Am I right, Libby? And she and I met because of the river. And Libby, can you take, and seriously, give it a 30 seconds. You'll hear 3 bells. So as you hear that, let's try and condense it, everybody. But truth is also important. So if we, we are not the majority culture. If we have to go a little longer, and if you go shorter, you can.
I'm just so moved by everything I'm hearing. I think what I need to say is that I'm also a child of the water. I grew up in Delta country along the San Jacinto River, the site of the world's largest oil and gas refinery in the Baytown area. When I was a child, it's now only the largest one in the country. It's just heartbreaking. My father was an engineer who worked for oil and gas. He was never happy unless he was in a pirogue on the bayou in his home place in Louisiana. And so my childhood is rooted in Louisiana. That's when I was most happy, is when we would go see our relatives there. Now I live in Denver. I sponsored a conference called the Downstream Neighbor because of our role in what happens to Louisiana, our role in the mountains. And as I went through that process, I learned that even at the top of a mountain, we are downstream because of the water cycle. And whatever goes in the water comes back, even if you're at the top of the water cycle. I also have a background in law, and I did some work in service to the rights of nature. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of the rights of the mother river of our continent.
Thank you. You only did 2 bells. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you all.
If you're eating, so would you like to go later?
I can go.
Please.
Mm-hmm. What I'll say is with the waters, we are one, and I think that really captures it.
That is perfect. Going down the screen, I see Selena is there. My sister Selena, my niece.
Hi. So for me, one of the reasons I've kind of been hands off when it comes to the water walks and I guess water ceremony and water everything is because I associate water with trauma because I lost 4 of my friends in a drowning in the river in my teenage years. And so I really had resentful feelings towards the river in particular, and water after that. I used to be a water baby as a child. I'm a Taurus Virgo Capricorn, so I'm all earth. But as a child, I was always in water and with water and like making tinctures and things like that, not knowing that's what it was. But in my older years, I haven't reconnected with water in any real way. And so observing and listening has been important for me, because I feel a slight call back to the water, but I think it's something that I personally like just push off or ignore because of the trauma or like the pain of it all. So I don't have any like positive things, I guess, to add to the conversation, but I recognize the need for healing, because I think it kind of stops me from being able to move in tradition the way that I need to, by being held by that trauma, if that makes sense.
It makes
That's all I have.
It makes so much sense. Makes so much sense. And I think right now I can say that there are lots of hearts that are crying with you right now. And the way I was taught in the Native way, tears are good medicine. They help with your healing. As beautiful as your smile is, it's okay to cry.
Thank you.
Jessica, my friend.
Yeah, that made me very teary-eyed, and I hear all of that. So my birthday is August 30th, and so Hurricane Katrina hit on August 29th. The levees broke on the day of my birthday, which is also the day people lost their lives, lost their home. And so in a kind of similar to Selena's point, I feel like I've always been connected to water in some way. I've always lived near water. But the day, this year is the 15th anniversary of Katrina. So the day the levees broke, I was 16, and I've always felt connected to the water, but really in an interesting way, I've always felt connected to the infrastructure of that water and how we have walled it off, closed it off, connected it, all of that. And so today, the irony in it all is that I'm doing that very same work, working with the walling of water and the moving of water and the damming of water. And I don't know yet, honestly, if it's poetic justice or what it is. But it is very much interesting because that's all I do. I talk about levees all day. I talk about water infrastructure. I talk about pipes. I talk about all that. And it's the same thing that highlight to me, and out of all the things in my childhood, that's one of the things that is highlighted, because I will never forget that at being 16 and seeing, not processing it, right? Like I remember going on Google Maps and then my family's like, where's the house? And I was like, I think it's underwater. And so just processing that whole thing, and then coming 15 years later and I'm doing work around the same thing that caused our city to flood, which was not, I want to be very clear, was not nature. Nature did its job. New Orleans did its job. The Delta did its job. The coast did its job. Man did not do its job, and in fact made the situation worse. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Nana Fofi.
Oh, I just want to give both of those two previous voices just a moment more of space. Thank you both. Yeah, I live in New Orleans, and as we prepare for Katrina 15, there is, and I'm glad that Jessica spoke, spoke to the healing. So there's the healing of the pilgrimage, and then there's the healing because so much trauma does come up in our movement spaces, in our climate work, because it's right there, right? It's right there. So for me, the water has always been my best number one teacher. And I come from fabulous teachers. I come from educators, but the water has always been my teacher. Um, one thing teaching me what is not in my control. One thing teaching me where are the parallels in our different traditions. In this pilgrimage, water has been such a teacher between the native and our African indigenous traditions of where we are similar, where we diverge, where we come together, how we do our medicines. Water in terms of the routes it takes, and again, where we mess up by trying to control it. Water in terms of the directions. This pilgrimage also goes for each stop 4 directions, but also the 3 dimensions of above, below, and within. And as Libby mentioned, the water cycle is wherever you are, it's all affected. So the water, just being with the water and learning the systems, how she takes care of herself, how she flows, how she moves, how she nourishes and receives nourishment. Water has always been a teacher in that way, and is continuing to teach so much on this pilgrimage. Thank you.
And I know it's more than just Carolyn there. So if you would like to share your family's interaction and you know, the question is, what is important to you about that we need to know about you in the water?
Hello, this is Michael, Carolyn, and Thomas and Marcus here, and we're in North St. Louis, on the lands of the mound builders. And I go down to the river quite frequently on my bicycle because we're about a mile away and do ceremony. And then it's very polluted down there with trash. And when I pick up a piece or recycling, I touch Pachamama or Mother River, and I bless her. It's like just a kiss on the cheek to each other, knowing that we're at least 72% water, and I love the work that you're all doing and your journeys, and we're just doing our little part here the best we can to honor the sacred Mother River. That.
Michael, I'm going to say thank you for speaking for your family. And then I'm going to skip Karma because we've already gotten to her. We've got about 10 minutes, but remember, time is circular and this isn't the end of this conversation at all. So Jenny, I see you there. Would you like to add in?
Sure, just really short and sweet. It's amazing to hear everybody's connections and just more about the work that all of y'all are doing. But I would say my relationship to water is more urban based. So I think about it a lot in my home, how I use it, where it comes out of, and trying to connect that back to where it's actually coming from. And my relationship to it is often in the garden, so in growing and keeping my plants watered. And I think I'm way more attuned with like the weather because I grow things, and looking for rain, waiting for rain, finding ways to keep all of my plants happy. So I think those 2 ways, at least for me currently, are how I have some relationship to water.
And Laura.
Hello, Sandy, and everyone here. I've been going in and out. I've been having some connection problems, so I hope you can hear me. Good, thank you. I'm blown away by this conversation. As some of you know, about a year ago, I think it's about the same time that the vision came to the creators of the Sacred Waters Pilgrimage. I and some of my colleagues came to a realization that we needed to come together around the issue of water. And it grew into the idea of a global freshwater summit, which is planned for April 2021. And that is about relationship with water and how we grow in community in relationship with that water, how we support the biome, and how we govern as responsible leaders to protect the people and the waters. And to come together with this group on these last few days has just been so humbling to me. I want to just quickly say that a part of my heritage is in North County was referenced here, was a creek, Coldwater Creek. It used to run behind my house. It was rerouted because they discovered that nuclear waste had been buried there, and that waste had gone into the ground and traveled through the creek throughout the communities in North County, leaving a legacy of cancer, including death in my own family. So that creek brought me home, or that creek keeps me home, and that creek connects to the Missouri River, which flows into the Mississippi River here in St. Louis. And those rivers have told us that they're okay. They can heal us, and we can heal them. And that it's calling us to them, and it's called me. So I'm grateful to answer that call and to find all of you here and unified as one with the water.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you so much. Chris, if you'd like to join in and give voice here, you can. I know it's not always easy to skip or anything like that, but please, if you would like to add in voice and truth, please do, or use the chat. You can also do that, folks.
I'd like to share a little, I think something that, like growing up, I feel like I did not have a connection to water. I grew up in a super landlocked part of Texas. But last year, as many of you know, I was in Taiwan, spending time with my family. And one of the most powerful things about being there for a full year was experiencing all of the sort of natural cycles and the way that sort of, just the way that the culture there is like completely shaped by full moon and by like, you know, all of the rituals we have are on the lunar calendar. And I think the way that relates to water is twofold. Sort of Taiwan is an island. And so part just seeing and really feeling the sense that like there is this very much sort of respect for water, and that this understanding that like water is powerful. Like water is way more powerful than us. And like we need to shape our experiences in our day-to-day life around that reality and around this understanding that we need to respect it, you know, we need to take care of it, and also that we have to adapt and live with it, and that, you know, typhoons, like the sort of the things that had me thinking about a lot of the perspective is, you know, the sort of level, and going back to what Jessica was sharing about Katrina, like that level of sort of that particular weather event and sort of the magnitude of that hurricane is something that happens on an annual basis in Taiwan. But the casualties, you know, because of the way that the culture is set up and the way that the government responds, and also the way that people respond, there are, you know, few to no casualties involved in that event because people have adapted over time and understand that this is something that happens regularly, and they have been able to change their life in order to adjust to that. So it's just interesting to think that the same pattern, you know, that is very much a part of nature can happen in two different places. And because of the way that people have built our systems, have completely, like, two completely opposite effects. So that's sort of how I've been thinking about water, especially from, I guess, like from my perspective.
Julia, thank you so much. Chris, I'm going to pass it to you for just a second, just in case, okay? I don't want to leave voices out. And that's one of the things about leadership. Sometimes those quiet young ones have important things to tell us. And
I'm not that young, as you might already know. I guess I'd share that I don't know that I have such a spiritual connection with the water, which is something that has concerned me sometimes, since the way our country thinks about and interacts with water is just as a resource, and that leads to some very bad outcomes generally. So I have appreciated my time going at the water ceremony with you all in St. Louis, and I try to stay connected, but it's something I continue to work on and think about. That's all I got.
And I have to add in a personal note. We miss you, Chris. We miss you at the waters.
Thank you. Thanks for saying I'm young.
So let me move on to Laura.
Do you mean a second Laura? Is there a second Laura?
There are beautiful, it is such a...
There are many of me.
Laura B.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Laura, we can hear you.
Good. So I'm at work right now, and I felt kind of weird about coming into this, but I really think it's important that you're doing this type of work. And my connection to water is, well, through my mother. She's Alaska Native, and her family grew up along the southwestern coast between the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers. And she spent her childhood fishing and berry picking. And I never got to experience that until maybe a couple years ago. My sister and I went back to her hometown with her, and she had been away for over 50 years. So it was amazing to see how the people are so closely connected to the water there. And I mean, they schedule their life and their food, and I mean, their freezers are full of like all different types of fish from the sea and the rivers, and they have to pay attention to the tide, the way it comes up and down, and how they go on the boats. And we went to fish camp and had to be careful where we left the boat for too long, because we could be stranded. I mean, the water would get too and we also carried water. We didn't have plumbing at fish camp, so there was lots of you know, the women carrying water back and forth. It was a good connection, and something that you had to do to eat and drink and live by. And now it's being threatened by Donlin Gold.
Every day we have respect for water.
And I'm not sure if Laura got to finish, but we'll try and make sure to get to everyone. And if you need to leave, we understand that. Kellen, you typed a beautiful piece into our chat. And one thing I'm going to encourage everyone to do is go to the page that this is on and add in. It would also be good if you have an organization that we can link to and follow. I know I want to know what Jessica's doing. I want to know what Laura's group is doing. And I think that's a very important thing. With it being 12, we're going to keep going because we still have some voices that need to be heard. And if I'm not mistaken, we are at, let me make sure, we are at Eileen. And Laura, did you get to finish? Thumbs up, maybe.
The main thing I wanted to say was that water is a very simple thing, and it's used to clean with and also used to purify our bodies with. So we needed to make ourselves healthy and also to put we put contaminants into it. So we have to find that balance and to live in harmony with respect to all the life in the water and all that it provides for us. We cannot forget to take care of how to keep the water safe for us to drink. That's the most important thing that I think we have to remember right now. And my mother and her culture, they would get in so much trouble for even spitting near the river that they get their water from. I mean, they had a special lake that they would bathe in and a special lake for other things. But for where you're getting your water to drink from was a really sacred spot. And we need these sacred spots to be kept pure. So thank you. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you added that. We needed to hear that voice.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to Eileen, and I'm going to thank you all for giving this time and for giving some of your hearts with this conversation. But remember, it doesn't have to end. Eileen?
Good morning, everybody. I just want to say that I feel like my relationship to water has always been tied early on as a baby to the ocean, as someone who's grown up on an island in Brooklyn, and then my parents coming from over the Pacific Ocean from Singapore, and then their parents coming from Hainan in the South China Sea. I feel a kindred spirit to my ancestors being fisher people, and I feel like I was taught from an early age to respect the water because of her power for nourishing us, and also her power to take down obstacles. And my mom survived a hurricane, Hurricane Andrew in Florida, and would always sort of, I feel like I was given these stories as both as a cautionary tale to respect her power, and but also how much she can provide for us in terms of being 3/4 water ourselves. Our bodies are connected to the earth in that way, and it's wonderful to imagine that we have within us the same abundance as the oceans full of fish. And so I will just close by saying that I honor and respect the water within me as the water that is within each and every one of you. And I really appreciate us having this conversation today too.
Thank you so much. People have had to move around, so I think we have missed. Jenny, did we get you?
Yes, I was able to share.
Okay, and I think that means that we have gotten to everybody. I'm trying hard not to let the bell keep playing.
I think we missed Basmi.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. Basmi.
Here.
I thought I was going to miss this. Such gratitude for being able to plug in and touch in with everyone here. Relationship to the water. I acknowledge that it wasn't until the last maybe 10 years that I really gave conscious thought to the water. I had an aunt in Tennessee when I was a little girl. There was a pump in the kitchen, and in the backyard, that's how she watered her pecan and fig and cherry trees and all of that good stuff. She always kept a lid on top of a glass of water. She drank Mountain Valley spring water her entire life, and this was, I think, an element on the excellent health that she retained late into her life. She taught me about ecology. She was born in 1903. So there were so many profound things I learned from her. I thought it was interesting the lid on top of the glass when I recognized she grew up in a coal mining town and coal dust permeated everything. I think of my father telling me how water and hygiene was so clean, was so necessary for good health, and that so often not having access to clean water meant that you didn't have an opportunity for good health. I was really struck by the Dene relatives when they came up here in 2016 and recognizing that they don't have fresh water coming onto the reservation. They have to bring the water for everything, for livestock, for cooking, for bathing, for everything, and how atrocious that is that we live in a country where we will allow, we disregard people of having access to clean water. For myself, I had a challenge last year of them shutting off my water here in St. Louis. And it was a sister who called from Detroit to the mayor that made sure I got my water turned back on. But I had many months of consciously exercising and get gratitude for the blessing of a true neighbor that I was able to access water. And so I carried water for several months and have a deeper appreciation. So as we're doing, now that I've become more aware, I was aware of Coldwater Creek and the pollution that we have throughout the waterways in the St. Louis metropolitan area, the nuclear aspect of how that is causing so much suffering to so many people that the corporate entities just breeze right past and can continue to operate without accountability on reclamating anything. So I give gratitude for the water because I find water healing and swimming. I used to love to swim in my youth because I could get down deep underwater in that kind of silence that I heard there was very healing for me. So I appreciate this opportunity to touch in with everybody and to hear everything. And as you're hearing all the excitement where I am, and this is such powerful work. I believe that the Creator is connecting these circles in this time so that we can heal and reclaim in our lives and the bodies of water in our communities, ways to appreciate and emerge into new ways of being. Gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
And I know we've gone over time, and I thought, how can we end this in a good way? And then I thought, no, we can't end this. We're all tied to water. We all need water for life. And I know in the Lakota way, when Standing Rock was going on, it's become a worldwide thing that people know what it means when we say, Mini Wachoni, water is life. And in the Ojibwe way, we say, Nibi Awin, Mimadasi Win. I think I said it correctly. But one gift that we've been given from one of the sisters is Doreen Day and her grandson were given a song that they have shared with all of us. And I thought that is the perfect way to end. The meaning of the words in Anishinaabe-Moan are, water, we love you. Water, we thank you. Water, we respect you. And this conversation can continue either with the pilgrimage, with Solidarity Economy. I thank both of those for letting us have this time to talk, with the Native Women Care Circle, with the Rebirth Group. There are lots of ways this conversation and these connections can keep going. But if you know the Nibi song, whether it sounds good or bad, or you want to stay muted, but join me in ending with that song. Nibe izakeku imiku Ijawene migu Ibe Isakeku Imikwichawe nimiku, Ijawe niku. You can find it on YouTube. It's called the Nibi Water Song, N-I-B-I. Ibe Izayeku, Imikwichawe nimiku, Ijawe niku.